So we're working through the Yoga Sutras, and this morning as I was preparing, I went back to sort of where we started on this recent thread. Officially, we're going to talk about Yoga Sutra 1.8 today, which is very short, but I want to remind us kind of what the bigger picture is. So in this part of the Yoga Sutras, the portion on contemplation, Patanjali is really teaching us how to be scientists, is the way I'll say it, to be curious and be in discovery of how things are. And so we're in this part of the, we've been told yoga is the practice of the cessation or the calming of the fluctuations of the mind. And we're now talking about what are the kinds of fluctuations that our mind goes through. And in Sutra 1.5, we were told there were 5 kinds. That was Sutra 6. So we were also told that they are either painful or painless. So our mind has 5 different ways of hopping around topic to topic, and they're either painful or painless. And one of those 5 ways that our mind hops around is something called misconception, which in Sanskrit is viparyaya. And what the sutra says is misconception occurs when knowledge of something is not based on its true form. I'll say that again. Misconception occurs when knowledge of something is not based upon its true form. The example he uses is one that's cited a lot in teachings, where there's a coiled rope in the corner of a dark room and the observer thinks it's a snake, and there's just a whole series of thoughts that come up when we experience fear or all the things. And we've all had this experience where we think something is something that it's not. So I want to tell a little story from my experience yesterday. I try when I read these sutras to just okay, well, where have I experienced this? Where I thought something was something that it was not. And a reminder that the thoughts can be either painful or painless. So yesterday, as I was in this program, this training with 2,000 people and leaders from all over the world, Tara and Jack and a woman named Dalila were the leaders for the first couple of sessions. And Dalila was a Black woman. And I know that they've included a lot of people from all over the world because that was part of what was shared at the beginning. Beautiful, bald, very serene looking Black woman. And I didn't even realize I did this, but when she started speaking, she spoke with an American accent. And I was very surprised. I was like, oh, I assumed she would be from Africa because I knew that they were recruiting people from all over the world. And the fact that I had that impression got me curious about how does my mind work? Why did I think that? What part of me drew that conclusion? I jumped to thinking I knew something that it wasn't painful or upsetting in any way. I would categorize it as painless, but it was something that I thought was true that wasn't. And the reason I bring up this example is I didn't think of it much until I was practicing this morning, and I was like, when do I make assumptions? And what's the effect? And now I'm kind of in a phase of discovery of how often I jump to conclusions about something where I really don't know. It also, it reminded me of an experience I had when we were living in France. And I bring this up because I think our experience up until this moment colors all of our thought patterns and influences our judgments, or what I'll call our prejudgments, which is the root of a prejudice. We all have prejudgments that we experience the world from. So when we were in France, I had this experience when I was about, I think I was 20 or 21 years old, where I was coming home late at night with a couple of friends, and we were outside our apartment building. And a man came up and asked us what time it was. And I'm a pretty trusting person. There was no sense in me that this was something I should be cautious about. So I looked at my watch and I told him what time it was. And then I punched in the key code to get into the building that I was going into. And he followed us in and he grabbed me. And I mean, I'd never been physically attacked like that before. I wasn't actually hurt, but it was so startling and so upsetting. I screamed, and the rest of the story is not important. But after that, anytime I saw a man that looked like him, I crossed the street. It was like a visceral thing where I would prejudge without really conscious thought, like I'm in danger and I'm going to cross the street. So we have this in us. Some of it's pretty visceral and unconscious. And some of it is like the experience I mentioned earlier of like, I had a conscious thought, oh, I wonder if this woman is coming to us from the continent of Africa. I was wrong. And I'm sure I was wrong about many of the men that I crossed paths with that I felt fear from. But there's a conditioning that I've had that has made me prejudge experiences. And I think our practice is a way for us to open up to these patterns of thinking that we have, these misconceptions. And I invite us into this not from a making ourselves wrong or judging us as being judgmental, but just as a practice of curiosity. Where may I assume things that are not true? So, with all those words, I'm going to invite us into some quiet, a place to just be in some of this discovery. Before I do that, does anybody have any comments or questions? Marsha, I see you smiling. You can unmute yourself.
Well, you said, I know this, you said it wasn't important what happened to you. It was important you're here. So sometime in another place, maybe.
I'll tell you right now. It's a quick story.
It was very important when you said it's not important.
Yeah. I wasn't harmed. I screamed so loudly. My dad is smiling. If you could see his face, you would see this. My mom and dad heard it upstairs. They were on the 5th floor of the apartment building. And I wasn't injured. I scared him and he ran out the door and, it turned out fine. But my physical body was threatened in a way that really kind of terrified me, and it stayed with me. And I guess the thing is that trauma, I'm learning so much about it because I haven't had much, what I thought was trauma in my life. But it has a physical landing in our body. And it's there, and sometimes it runs us, even if we're not consciously aware of what it is. And our practices can help us just to understand a little bit more of that side of our experience in the world and understand how it affects us. And I'll say work with it, because I don't think shutting it away is necessarily the answer. But being in a little bit of curiosity and discovery around how we are in the world and why can help us be more mindful about how we are in the world. All right. I'm sorry if I left you hanging. And now we'll go into our practice. All right, so if you haven't already, create your posture. Create a foundation that's supportive. And if it's safe and comfortable for you to close your eyes, you're invited to close your eyes or at least lower your gaze. Let's begin with something that's real, something that's tangible, physical, and start with our breath. And notice your breath as it is showing up right now. So whether you've deepened it or it's still soft and natural, just bring your attention to your breath. Notice your breath actually in your body, so any physical experience of your breath. Unless we want to get very philosophical, we can safely say that our breath is real. It's tangible. It's right here in the present moment. And that's why it's a lovely anchor for our practice, right? When our head takes us out of what's real, we can always come back to what's here right now, happening physically. As you sit today, when your thoughts arise, get curious. Is this true? Is it painful or painless? going to offer some prompts just for the purpose of research. I'll say a word, and your thoughts about the word are the topic of your research today. Mission when I say a word. Or painless. Dog. Painful or painless. Food. Painful or painless. Summer. Painful or painless. Mother. Painful or painless. triangle pose. Painful or painless? Take a bigger, fuller breath. Do that one more time, just a nice big breath. When you're ready, if you haven't already, you can open your eyes. Thoughts, impressions, insights. Paula, please share.
For every word you said, I had a painless side and a painful side for everything. Some of it had to do with, the painful side would have to do with loss. Some of it would be actual physical pain, but then the painless side had to do with happy memories.
Yes. Yes. Who else? Marcia.
Well, that's probably true because, nothing is absolute when you're thinking back at memories. I mean, my dogs give me great painless, but yet when I had to lose dogs, it was painful when they died. So, there's that balance. But when you said triangle pose, that one just made me smile. Because it used to be more uncomfortable and painful in my mind and my body. And I love the opening of it. It's become one of my favorite poses. So I agree with what Paula's saying. There's yin and yang. It's a little of both.
Yeah.
And it's sometimes very situational.
Yeah.
In an exercise like this, it's different, but all day long, there's an experience that comes with our associations and our impressions.
So were you thinking of maybe just the first thought experience? Because the longer I sat with the word, then it kind of took off to some painful memory. But my immediate was painless, or some painful, right?
For me, the invitation is to just be mindful and curious about how our thoughts are affecting us. Right, so this exercise of practicing meditation is about starting to develop those muscles to be aware of our modifications. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And there's not a right answer. It's about building the awareness muscles. And I would offer, without, wanting to put my experience on this too much, it's both. And sometimes we can't see the other side, right? We're so deep in the darkness of it, or the pain of it, that we don't have access to seeing that that's where we are. And this practice can help us observe ourselves in that place and say, is this true? There's these famous stories that meditation and other wisdom teachers teach of, the man who loses his horse. The horse runs off. And the villagers come up and they say, "Oh, this is so terrible. You lost your horse." And he says, maybe, maybe not. We don't know. His son is in a terrible accident. And everybody says, "Wow, I'm so sorry. This terrible thing happened." He says, maybe, maybe not. And then they come to conscript all of the young men, and he doesn't go to war because he's injured. Like, there's just so many circumstances in every situation that we're invited to be a little bit more in, I don't know. And is it real? Right? I don't know that person that looks like my attacker is dangerous. That doesn't mean I shouldn't use my experience to inform me to make good choices. Don't walk around at 11 p.m. at night in Paris by yourself. Like, that's not a good choice. But that doesn't mean I need to cross the street every time I see somebody that looks like that person. Right? Like, don't go up to a dog you haven't met and put your hand in its face. But that doesn't mean you should always be afraid of all dogs. And so our practice can help us take those things that have really become almost second nature, and we assume it to be so, and say, is it true? Right? And actually notice that we're prejudging. Right? I'm prejudging men that look like my attacker. I'm prejudging dogs. I'm prejudging triangle pose. For me, it's wheel pose. There's a little bit of dread when that word comes out of the teacher's mouth, and there's a little bit of are you going to step in or are you going to not? So I don't know. I mean, this is all research about who we are. And so I love this practice because it offers us that opportunity for insight. The good, the bad, and the ugly. All right, well, it's 8:01, so I'm gonna have to say goodbye. Thank you for sitting and being in this inquiry work.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, Kate. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.